Apple just released iOS 27 Beta 1 to register developers, and there are several new features and changes, a lot of which have nothing to do with AI. So in this video, I want to talk about some of the new AI features, but also more than 30 standout features that aren't necessarily related to AI, and a lot of these Apple did not even cover. Okay, so let's start with something that I just used out in the wild, and I found it to be extremely useful. And it's going to be a strange place to start one of these videos. We're going to go into the Wallet application, and if we tap on the plus up here in the upper right hand corner, we have Create a Pass. That's a new feature here in iOS 27 that allows you to create a pass for tickets, memberships, and more with visual intelligence. So let me show you how this works. If we tap on continue, I have a Planet Fitness membership where I go to the gym, and there's not a default way to have that in my Apple Wallet. So every time I have to search for the Planet Fitness app, I have to tap a couple of buttons, and then I eventually get in there to my QR code that they scan. But now with iOS 27, all I have to do is double click the right, button right here, the side button, and your pass is right there. It eliminates even needing to go into, this third-party application. So let me show you how this works. We're just going to scan this, and take a picture right here. It's going to use visual intelligence to detect that QR code there. And then check this out. Within just a couple of seconds, it not only has the QR code there, which is my pass, but it also registers that my member number is up here. It shows what it's for, Planet Fitness, my name, and also my member status. So it shows it's Black Card. And if it got something wrong by chance, or if you just want to change the looks, the aesthetics of this, you could go to Edit Pass down here in the bottom. And if you tap on this color palette in the left, you could change the background color. So if you want to make it like red, for example, you could do that. There we go. You also have these options in the bottom right-hand corner to add or remove fields. So if you wanted to add something in there, you could do that very easily as well. We'll check on this little check mark right here. We'll tap on that. And all of a sudden, there we go. We have our pass now for Planet Fitness. And if we go ahead and tap on that, you can see it will show the pass. If I'm like on my lock screen, if I'm just walking in, if I double press right here on that side button, boom, and I can go down here and pull up my Planet Fitness pass, and I'm able to get in right away, again, without ever even unlocking my phone or going into that third-party application. Another really cool feature here in iOS 27 is that we have relevant information inside of the phone application when you're on a phone call. So for example, if I'm calling somebody and it's their birthday, we have this right here. It says birthday found in contacts, and it shows that the birthday is today. So if you forget to wish somebody a happy birthday and you're on the phone with them, you will get a little reminder. But that's not the only thing. It can also surface relevant information for things like if you're on the phone with an airline, it will show your confirmation number and all the relevant details, so you don't have to go into your mail or into your messages to see that information. It pops up right here, so you could say it while you're on the phone in the call screen. The AirPods get some really nice updates here in iOS 27. So if we go into our AirPods settings, you will see first off that this page has been redesigned. So it looks much better than it did in iOS 26. So we not only have the little volume slider right here, we can change the volume from this page, but also we have pretty much everything down here has been renamed, and we also have glyph icon. So it's more, more resembles the actual settings application. Down here before in iOS 26, everything was just kind of blah. It was just kind of, vague. There was nothing really to indicate where you were. So it's a lot more organized now with the glyphs. We also have, like I said, different categories. So audio and routing, controls and gestures, live translation, accessibility, and so on. It's a lot more organized, but most importantly, if we go into audio and routing, check this out. We now have a brand new feature that a lot of people are going to love, myself included, and that is equalizer. If you go into equalizer, we now can set a custom EQ for AirPods. So if we go into our music and start playing a song, it will pop up right here. So we could use that song as a reference point. So if we tap on play right here, it will start playing at that song, and you can kind of adjust, how you want the EQ to be. Of course, you need to have your AirPods in so you actually hear, what it's tweaking on your AirPods. But you can see you could change the lows, the mids, and the highs, and it's not even like sticking to certain points. It's super customizable. Like you can really go wherever you want with this. So you can see all the way from low to high with that really cool liquid glass kind of animation on there as well, and it will stick and stay that way for other songs as well. You could always preview it right here by tapping on play. You can see the little waveforms there as well. So super cool. Finally, after such a long time, we have custom EQ for the AirPods. Okay, so here's another cool feature that I think a lot of people are going to like. So with iOS 27, iMessage now has send indicators for each individual message. So if you've ever been on like a plane on, the airline's Wi-Fi, it's usually pretty bad. And if you send a photo and then you send text after that, like if you're trying to text somebody, but you have a couple of photos that are still like sending and they're going really slow, it's going to pause the whole conversation. You're not going to be able to send those text messages until until the video or photos go through. But now with iOS 27, iMessage has send indicators for each message. So like if I send this video, for example, and then I say hi, you can see that we will have separate indicators underneath of the media. Okay, so let's try that again with a longer video. So if I send this longer video right here, and then I say something afterwards saying, how about that? So first off, you can see the small indicator underneath of that now. So it will show briefly, and if you send some text, of course the text might go through first before that video, but it will show you a send indicator below it. Now, easily one of the biggest standout features to me with iOS 27 was just how fast everything is. More specifically, we have the apps that launch a lot faster now. You'll notice that like on a day-to-day basis. But for me, most importantly, is AirDrop. AirDrop used to be so slow, really ever since I can remember. It sometimes would fail, and just sit there and hang, or just go really slow. But now with iOS 27, AirDrop is so fast. Pretty much every single time I've used it, it's blazing fast and it sends to my other devices almost instantly, even if it's a large file. So I've noticed that it's the fastest when you're sending from iOS 27 to another iOS 27 device, but it's also really quick when sending to an iOS 26 device. So just know that AirDrop is going to be much faster here in iOS 27, and you will notice it. In the Mail application, there's a new ranking system when you search, so the emails that you're actually looking for will pop up first, or at least near the top now. So just notice that search overall in Mail is significantly better than it was in iOS 26, which we have over here on the left. Also in iOS 27, you will clearly see when indexing is in progress, as you can see right here. So all your information is being indexed still. So if you're noticing like slow performance or bad battery life, or things just aren't showing up as they should, keep in mind this is a beta, so that is all expected behavior. But also you will see that you will be indexing for probably a lot longer than you thought. So just keep in mind, you will see that right there front and center in the settings. Now, while we're in the settings, let's go into Wi-Fi, because there's another feature in here that I think is really awesome. And it's right here called Connectivity Assist. So what this does is it uses your cellular data in addition to Wi-Fi. So it uses both for a more reliable internet connection. So a good example of this is when you're leaving out of your house, you're connected to Wi-Fi, and as you start driving off, past your driveway, as you get down the street, you'll notice that you're still trying to connect to Wi-Fi. It has like that one bar right there and nothing loads. So if you're like me, you usually go down here and you turn Wi-Fi off, and then you can, connect and get done what you're trying to get done. But now with iOS 27, with Connectivity Assist, and I tried this myself, it's so much better. It actually uses, like I said, both LTE and Wi-Fi at the same time, so you don't need to turn off Wi-Fi. It will now, keep that connection alive as best as it can as you move away from that instance where you're out of the driveway, still connected to your Wi-Fi. Okay, here's a big one. So Apple did not mention this, but we've been waiting on this for quite some time. At least a lot of people have been. And that's if you go down to your settings and go to sounds and haptics, and you scroll down, take a look at this. Not only do we have our ringtone slider right there to set the volume for our ringtone, but if you deselect match ringtone volume for both alarms and timers and alerts and system sounds, you can set a custom volume for your alarms and your alerts that's separate from your ringtone. So that is one of the features that's been on Android for quite some time that a lot of iOS users have complained about, but complain no longer, because now you can set that as long as you deselect the match ringtone volume section right there. Now here's something that stood out to me right away after installing iOS 27, and that is the brand new Apple Pay checkout screen. It looks so much better. So if we go to buy with Apple Pay here, check out iOS 26 on the left versus iOS 27 on the right. So this page looks so much cleaner. It's not only more of a full screen experience, but we get a nice visual of the card right there. The amount is up top in bold, and you can see all this information, and we can also change cards easier. So before we had this little other cards and pay later options right here, we tapped on that and that would allow us to change our cards. But now in iOS 27, we have this little option right here. If you tap on that, you get this really interactive interface right here where it shows all pay later or use rewards. And you can also swipe to go in between your different cards right here as well, which is super cool. So if you have more than 2 cards, you'll see a nice little interactive, menu here. We can choose between your cards and you get haptic feedback with it as well. So it's just such a great interface here. You can see the Apple Pay text up top as well. Awesome redesign here in iOS 27. Okay, so here's another feature that you're going to really love, and you're really going to notice this over time. So it's going to take you a while to use this, but you will notice that dictation is significantly improved in iOS 27. Like, it is a night and day difference from iOS 26. I was not prepared for the difference here. So if we go ahead and start dictation, I'm just going to say some things kind of quick just to try to trip it up. On Tuesday, June 10th, 2026, I paid $24.99.99 for 8 MacBook Pros, then emailed support@example.com to ask whether Wi-Fi 7, USB-C, and 5G millimeter wave were enabled by default. The reply said no, they're not, which seemed odd because the serial number was M4P7XQ9 AF42. Okay, so that was a relatively easy one, but you could see some of the differences in the price right there. Also, you can see the commas are in the correct spots on iOS 27. They're kind of missing in iOS 26. Also right there, you see Wi-Fi 7 is, put as Wi-Fi 7 instead of typing out 7. And it may just seem like a small change right there with that little excerpt, but keep in mind, if you're using this several times a day, like I am, I send all my texts pretty much with dictation, you will notice a big difference right away, especially throughout that first day of using it. Now, keep in mind, this is not enabled by default. You will need to enable this. If you go into your settings here and you go into general, we're going to go down here to keyboard. And if you scroll down to dictation, first off, you have to have dictation enabled, but you will need to enable advanced dictation preview. And it says an early preview with even more accurate dictation and automatic punctuation powered by a new on-device model. And you do not need the new Siri to be enabled to get this to work. I had this working before I had access to the new Siri, so keep that in mind. And speaking of grammar, you'll also notice that iOS 27 adds automatic proofreading throughout the system. So not just in messages, not just in notes, you'll see this even in third-party applications. It's going to check your grammar and your spelling as you go without you asking. And like here's an example of something you might see. So if I use the wrong instance of there, so it should be THEYRE instead of there spelt like that, and it will pick up on that. You can see iOS 26 on the left did not pick up on that grammar mistake. But now if I tap on this, you can see it will show it's supposed to be there, and you can see that little icon next to it as well. That is new. So if we tap on that, you can see it will show why it's the correct one. So it says word usage right there instead of the original. You can accept all suggestions, you can ignore, and you can stop checking grammar right there as well. So we tap on accept. You can also go over to see going to is just going, so to is an unnecessary word. You can accept that. You can accept all suggestions, and then it will accept all of them and continue checking your grammar as you keep typing. And once again, you can see if I type in this is too hard, it will give a little animation and underline at that 2 right there, and I can tap on that and tap right here, and you can see it will change it to 2. You can of course also tap and just instantly press on the suggested word right there, but if you want to see more details, you could tap on that to show you more details about that suggestion. Also, if you select text, you can see you do have a Siri option right here, so you could ask Siri about this. Before, if you selected text, you basically just had the option to look up or search the web, which search the web is a little bit different. This allows you to just ask Siri about whatever it was that you had selected. Okay, so here's something pretty cool in iOS 27. So you can now have Safari auto organize your tabs. So if you're like me and you have a lot of tabs everywhere and it can get kind of cluttered and pretty disorganized, you can go up here to the top of your tab view and tap on this and go to organize tabs. And by default, it's set to never, but if we actually go into here and we go to automatically create topics, it will create topics for you and it will organize those better. So you can see this one is just apple.com. So if I go ahead into there, it will show me all these windows, these 4 tabs that are apple.com. It organizes it better. And of course you can have different ones, like this one's iOS 26 specific. So it will show everything with iOS 26 right there. Also, if you go up here, you can also filter by certain websites as well. Also in iOS 27, if you go to a new tab, if you go to the new tab view right here, you'll see that up top, we now have a new interface for our bookmarks, our reading list, and also our history. They're all up there right at the top for easy access. Also in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see that we now have a tab glyph icon to go into the tab view, whereas before we had these 3 dots right there. And it's kind of a mystery to a lot of people how to actually get into the tab view, because you just have to press on it and then go into tab view, or you just had to go to the bottom bar and swipe up to get into there. So it's always kind of a mystery for people who aren't super tech savvy and follow like my videos, for example. Okay, so I think it's about time we talk about the new Siri in iOS 27, because this is a big deal. So if we go into our settings and go into Siri, you will see that we have Siri beta, and we actually now have what's called Siri AI with iOS 27. So not only when we activate Siri do we have a brand new animation that pops out of the dynamic island instead of the full screen glow like we had before. But also we have expressive voices preview. If you enable this, this will allow you to change the voice of your Siri. So you can see you have the different voices right here, where you can also change the pace, the expressivity, and also accent. So you can see right there I have American, but you can change the accent if you would like to, and you kind of just choose your voice and then you change the pace and the expressivity. You tap on plus, and now you will hear a much more lifelike version of Siri that doesn't really sound near as much like a robot as before. It's more indicative of like the voice mode in ChatGPT, for example. And then also in the settings, you'll see that we have app, and this is because we do have a standalone Siri app now, which I'll show you in a moment. And this is where you can change some settings for that, such as keeping conversations by default to only 30 days or 1 year, or if you want to keep your conversations forever, you can also choose to open up to a conversation or a new conversation. But let me show you what makes this so special, because it's not just the animation, it's not just the new Siri application, it's actually that we have personal context built in now with Siri AI. So I can say something pretty sophisticated like, when did my dad say they were planning to leave again? And it's going to go into my messages and try to find the last time my dad said they were going somewhere, because I forgot the time and I need to get a reminder. And take a look at that. It says we are planning to leave at 4:30-ish. So who is he talking about? Who is he talking about leaving? Okay, so it says he didn't specify exactly who we was, but he mentioned leaving for a party. And if you want to expand on this and really ask more information, you could swipe down like this and it will show you that it got that context from messages, and I can ask further. I really need to know who he was talking about. Okay, so if I dig a little bit deeper with Siri, it will tell me that it was leaving with my mom for an engagement party that evening. My mom also sent you the address for the party that same day. So you can see it will give me all that context right there, which is so cool. If I tap on this little expand view, it will open up the default Siri application. And from here, we can go ahead and continue the conversation and going back and forth like a true chatbot. You could also enable voice mode right here. And you can see I can talk to Siri using voice mode within this chat. And Siri also has a lot more real world knowledge now. So you can use personal context in conjunction with, the personal context and the on-screen awareness, which we'll talk about on-screen awareness in a minute. But if I say something like, where's my wallpaper from? And you can see it says, based on your photos, it looks like you get many of your wallpapers from brandonbutch.com, and it includes different collections that I actually have. So that's pretty cool. It used the personal context inside of my Photos application to figure that out. But let's take it a step further to on-screen awareness, and watch this here. So if I go into something like this on Instagram, we're really curious. This place looks amazing, but I don't know where it's from, and the caption or the comments didn't really give me good results for where this is actually from. I can ask Siri now. So where is this located? It looks awesome. So it's going to use its real world knowledge and also seeing what's on my screen. So it's going to use on-screen awareness and real world knowledge to tell me where this beautiful location is at. So it says, it looks like Moraine Lake and Banff National Park. Have I been there before? I feel like I have. So I'm asking if I've been there. So I'm hoping that it looks through my photos and can figure out if I've actually been to this location or not. So it says, yes, I have been there. I visited Moraine Lake and Banff National Park in October 2025. You have several photos saved from that trip. If I pull down, you can see it will actually show me the photos I took from that location. How cool is that? What was the temperature on the day that I was there? And I can go and find that exact date and tell me the temperature on that day. Did I have anything interesting in my calendar from those days I was there? So now I can ask it for things about, something in my calendar, and it can reference my calendar and my events that I have to tell me if there's anything during those days. And keep in mind, I don't say the exact day. It shows, exactly. Yeah, it knows exactly where I'm talking about and what I'm talking about. I don't have to reiterate, exactly what I want it to do. So it does show me that my calendar showed me staying. It shows the hotel, and it shows the flights and everything. And here is what the Siri application looks like. Again, this is the conversational chatbot where you can change Siri chats to expire after 30 days and things like that. We also have the little new right there. It's very indicative of ChatGPT. You can also change this view from a grid view to a list view. You can go back into, these different conversations and continue and pick up where you left off. And by the way, I will have a full separate video coming specific to Siri AI and a lot more advanced features for that. So stay tuned for that. But the next thing I want to show you is the new Siri mode in camera. So if you pull up your camera application, there's going to be a brand new Siri button down here. And this is pretty cool. So it's a new version of visual intelligence, essentially. So what I like most about this is actually the nutritional facts. So you can do a lot more from this, like all the real world stuff. But something I found really cool is that if you scan a, food item, like we have chips chips right here, before you even have to take the picture, it will say, look up nutrition. So it will detect that you're looking at something like food related, and you can look up the nutrition facts and about that. So let's go ahead right here and see if it'll pull up again. If not, you could always just take the picture, and then from there it will say, look up nutrition, and it will load the nutrition details for that food item along with a ranking system. So check this out. It says the nutritional value is low. So it says it's highly processed, the grains are whole, and the fat type is saturated. And it gives you more of a description right there. So of course there are other apps that can do this a lot better and with a lot more detail, but have this built in to the iPhone with visual intelligence here in the camera application is pretty amazing. Now iOS 27 also greatly improves the cleanup feature. So if you go into the little 3-dot menu down here to edit, you'll see that we have a brand new option over here called Tools. So before, when you tapped on that, it would just show you this right here. It wouldn't really give you any other options, but now we have Tools instead of just Cleanup. So before, Cleanup was the only thing we had in here. Now we have Cleanup, Extend, and Reframe. I'll show the other two in a moment, but let's go to Cleanup and see how this compares to iOS 26, because now with iOS 27, Cleanup uses generative AI. So the end result is going to be significantly better than iOS 26, which just used content-aware fill, kind of like what Photoshop did back in the day. So let's say I want to get rid of this bag that I'm holding in my hands, and you can see that my leg is behind that bag. So in iOS 26, if I were to try that, I would just kind of, go over this right here, and it would eliminate that bag, but take a look at what it would do to my leg underneath. Since it's not generative, it's not going to fill it in with anything. So you can see it just completely basically makes me look like I have an amputated leg. So I don't have a leg right there, but in iOS 27, since it's now generative, check this out. So I do cleanup on that same bag right there on the same photo, it's going to detect it, and I'll do cleanup, and check this out. So it did take a little bit longer to complete, but check that out. It recreated my leg and my shoe right there. Whereas in iOS 26, it just completely eliminated everything. So you can do that when there are things like over your face or over your legs like this, for example. So you'll notice that cleanup is just much better now in iOS 27 because again, it is using generative AI. Okay, so now let's talk about the other two right here because we also have Reframe and Extend, and both of these are really cool as well. So let's do Extend first. So what this does is it will take the subject and it will basically blur out the outside because it's going to extend the photo to fill in the gap. So for example, you can see all these people on the right hand side. Let's say I wanted to move myself all the way over here. That way there's not as much distraction in the background. I don't want to cut off my arm, but maybe we'll do right there. So you can see I could even zoom in a little bit. So I'll zoom in and do it right there. So now it's going to basically generate anywhere where you see this little blur right there, it's going to fill that in. So if I go ahead to Extend, it's going to use generative AI and fill in the gaps and recreate that part of it. Now keep in mind, Extend does use the private cloud compute, so it's all happening, via the cloud. So it's not going to be using on-device AI for the Extend feature. And there we go. You can see the kind of animation as it goes away. And there we go. It recreated that part of the image. And now I have a brand new look. So you could always, go ahead and do the check mark right here. And you can see that is what the new image looks like. So you can see what the original is. So if I go and tap right here, it shows it was cropped. And that is what it filled in right there with the Extend feature. Pretty cool. And it actually works pretty well, a lot better than I thought it would. Now let's try something else. Let's try Reframe. So we'll use the same photo right here, and I'm going to show you Reframe because this one's pretty cool as well. This allows you to essentially turn your photo into a spatial photo and essentially change the whole direction of the photo, the composition of the photo. So again, you can see the surroundings are kind of blurred like that, and check this out. You can turn it around like it's a spatial photo like we saw in iOS 26, but the difference here is you could change the perspective of the image. So let's just do like this. We'll turn myself sideways and kind of from a down angle, and we'll go ahead and reframe that. So now it's going to fill in a lot of this image. You can see like pretty much half the image is going to be recreated now using this. So check that out. So that is the reframe feature. So that looks pretty good. So if I tap on this, you can see that's the original, and then that is the reframed version. It looks like a completely different photo. So you can really manipulate the photos pretty well here. And it's actually, without a trained eye, that just looks like a regular photo. Like you wouldn't really be able to tell that it was using AI, to change that perspective. So that is a pretty neat feature as well. Something you might want to use inside the Photos app in iOS 27. iOS 27 adds a really awesome feature to shortcuts. And this is something I've been waiting on for a very long time. So now in shortcuts, if you go to create a new shortcut, check this out. right away you get a prompt to describe a shortcut. So now, instead of just going into the actions and trying to build shortcuts, which was very confusing for 99% of people, now you just simply describe using natural language what you want to create. I want to automatically save my screenshots to the Notes application in a folder called Screenshots on iOS 27. So it says, should I create a new folder for you, which I do want to do. So yes, create a new folder. So you can see you can have kind of a conversation back and forth to build this. So it says, there we go, it's done. So this shortcut will create a new notes folder called screenshots, take a screenshot, save the screenshot to the new folder. And from here, you can tap on the play and it will do that. So you can see it took a screenshot and I'll do always allow, and then it will save it into here. Obviously, this is not a great shortcut, but you could just see how it works. So I'll run this real quick and see if it works. There we go. It took a screenshot and it automatically saved it into that folder. So it does work. And if you want to see the details of that, you could just long press right here and go to edit, and you can see the different actions if you tap on this button right here. So if you want to add on to it, you can. So you still have all the functionality that you have in shortcuts, normally, but it will just simplify it if you tap right here into this little Siri icon up here, this Apple Intelligence icon. Okay, so if you share your location with other people on your iPhone, you're going to like these next two features. So first off, you can see that when you're sharing your location with somebody, you now have a new option for customs. You can now set a custom time limit that you want to share that location with that person. And if you go into custom, you can see it shows share for, and you can choose the amount of days, hours, and minutes, or you can choose a custom date right there. And it says you can share for at least 15 minutes and up to 30 days. So if you don't quite want, the 1 day or the 30 days, you want somewhere in between, you can now set a custom duration for your location sharing. And you can see that before on iOS 26, it was just for 1 hour, end of day, or indefinitely. Now it's for 1 hour for today, always, or custom. You can also see a change right there. Before it said until end of day, now it just says for today. And also before it said indefinitely, now it says always. And also used to be a little title up there that said share my location. That is now gone, and it just shows the options now. But there's also another change in Find My that's going to have a lot of people divided on whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. But if you're sharing your location with somebody, you're now able to hide your location. So this is going to be something, if you go ahead and tap on that, it will hide your location from the person you're sharing with, and they will not get a notification when you hide or when you unhide your location. So maybe if you're trying to surprise somebody and you don't want them checking and seeing your location so they don't spoil it, you can use that. Of course, there are other more nefarious ways to use that, but that is something that's new here in iOS 27, the ability to pause your location sharing without sending a notification to the other person. Now here's a small but awesome change in iOS 27. So if you go to the timer in the control center, you can see that before it would just open up the clock application and take you to timers, but now in iOS 27, it has this really cool timer interface at the top where you can drag to set your timer, and you have haptic feedback with it as well. And you just tap right here on start timer and it will start it right from there. No need to go into the clock application. Much more satisfying. Here's a very useful feature in iOS 27. It's kind of niche, but if you have two phones, you can now switch phone numbers without transferring your eSIM. So you'll be able to switch your phone number from one device to another without having to go through the whole eSIM transfer process. Okay, so here's a big one in iOS 27, and this one's really cool. So if you go into the passwords application and go into security, you can see that I need to fix 425 of my passwords. That's way too many. I'm never just going to do that because it's just overwhelming. I don't want to do that. However, with iOS 27, we can finally do it with just one tap. We can automatically fix 144 passwords. And what this is going to do is it's going to use AI to go in and change the password on all of these 144 websites without me having to go into Safari and manually change my passwords. Now this is safe and secure. It's not going to read your passwords or anything like that. So I would not be worried about the security or the privacy of this. But if you go ahead and tap on get started, check this out. It says sign in and save passwords. You'll receive a notification when passwords are ready to be fixed. And we have automatic verifications because it will automatically use one-time codes like 2FAs that are delivered to this iPhone when signing in to eligible accounts. So again, what it's going to do is agentically go into these websites and fix your passwords for you, without you having to lift a finger besides just tapping when to start. So if I go ahead to continue, you can see it shows the ones that are compromised. I can go to fix 144 passwords and it can say, do I want to allow it to temporarily access verification application codes, I could tap on allow and it will begin. And if you tap on show details, it will show you, on a account by account basis. It's going to even show you the process. So it says navigating websites, unable to sign in. It's going to take you through the process. So of course, it's not going to be able to sign into all of these, especially because this is a test, device. It's my beta device, but it will work on my main device where I have access to 2FA and all that. And check this out. There's also a live activity for this. So even when you go out of the passwords application, it will show you the progress via a live activity coming out of the dynamic island. And then here's another really cool feature. So if you're like me and you really like a minimal, clean lock screen, you're going to love this new feature in iOS 27. So if you haptic press right here, if you long press and go to customize and you tap on the clock icon, before you could only make it smaller by simply dragging, and you can make it really as small as that. That was like the smallest you can get the clock. But now in iOS 27, we have this really inconspicuous button up here in the upper right hand corner. And if we tap on that, check this out, it puts it all the way up at the top, a really small clock next to the date. And that is super clean. So now if I go ahead there and I tap on done, check out my lock screen. It's now this really clean, really minimal lock screen where it shows the time and the date up top, and all of this is empty. So this would look great, especially with a really animated wallpaper. Like if you have a lot going on with the wallpaper, you'll be able to really see that a lot there. But you can also take this a step further and make it really clean as well, because if you play music and you go to the lock screen, now for the first time, you could clear the now playing little bar right here, the now playing menu. So if you go to that and clear it, even when you're playing music, you can have a really clean lock screen aesthetic. So those are some of the initial standout features in iOS 27 beta 1. I have a ton of other features and changes I will be showing you guys in my beta 1 what's new video, which is coming pretty soon. So stay tuned for that if you want to see more than 200 features and changes. So that's coming soon. I'll go through the details and all the really small changes as well. This is more of just a first look at some of these standout features that I've really noticed and loved within the first few days of using the software. Let me know what you think about these features and what you think of iOS 27 overall down in the comment section below, and I will see you guys very soon.